To try to create a level playing field of sorts in ascertaining settings equivalence, we captured PC at 1080p on DLSS quality mode, unless otherwise stated. I'll try to keep this brief, but I do want to show we've done the legwork here, or rather our valuable contributor Mohammed Rayan has. So let's kick off. Starting with crowd density, there's clearly a thinning of the crowds as we move from left to right. By concentrating a little more on the far left NPCs, we'd say that medium quality is the closest approximate match to the PC version in both docked and handheld play. Next up, an easy one, contact shadows, where the Switch version in both modes seems to have them enabled, this one being a simple on-off toggle. Volumetric fog resolution next. This one seems to be closest to PC's medium on both docked and handheld play, as is the case for the volumetric cloud setting as well. Ambient occlusion though, here's where we start to see some divergence, as the docked quality mode seems to look closest to PC's high, while handheld performance mode presents more like the low preset. There are also differences in mirror quality, as you can see here. Let's look at docked mode first, where Switch 2 gives a good showing. It's most similar to the high setting on the PC version. Looking at the handheld equivalent, we've tried to match the lower resolution on PC, which now seems to suggest that Switch 2 is closest to the medium settings. Beyond that, things get a little more complicated because it's clear there's a lot of custom work on the Switch 2 version of Cyberpunk 2077 when it concerns aspects such as shadow quality, screen space reflections, and definitely level of detail. All of these components have no definitive match with PC or other consoles. Screen space reflections, for example, check out this example. Scaling from ultra down to low, Switch 2 specifically presents most similarly to the low preset on PC, but even then there are differences. Meanwhile, in this scene, the ground looks most similar to the PC's high preset, but at the same time, the door is taking on additional reflections that are not found on the PC version at all, which is certainly interesting. Evidence perhaps of extra SSR ray marches. Low quality is the broadest general match for our approximate PC settings, but clearly this is not a one-to-one match. Moving on to shadows, Cyberpunk 2077 has a range of settings that we tried to match, but only with limited success. Local shadow mesh quality for starters, well, this does seem to present in a way that looks like the PC's low quality preset. Cascaded shadow resolution, well, based on this comparison, medium is a good fit for the docked quality mode, while low is most similar to the handheld performance mode. Distant shadow resolution, based on this Vista shot, Switch 2 in both docked and handheld modes is up there with PC's high. Beyond that, things get a little trickier. Cascade shadow range. We've opted for medium as the closest PC equivalent, but the truth is there are changes. This shot suggests that Switch slots between medium and low, and the same thing here in what looks like definitive evidence. But then we get an example like this, where the Switch version draws in a self-shadow later than PC's low setting. However, in this final shot, Switch 2 is equivalent to PC's high. It's pretty tricky then, so we've gone straight down the middle with our approximate choice, and medium it is. Geometry detail and level of detail is also custom, very much so. So looking at this example where it's unlikely that the game is under too much stress, geometry on Switch 2 handheld and docked modes can be significantly simplified up against PC's low setting. Indeed, in some areas, the base PlayStation 4 exhibits some detail that is not present in the Switch 2 edition. There's the sense that CD Projekt Red has strategically nipped and tucked, usually in areas much less noticeable, like here from the Kabuki streaming test run, for example, where the tubes here are less rounded than the PC version. Interestingly, just as Alex discovered way back in the original review, changing the level of detail preset on PC doesn't seem to make many changes, if any, at all. Rerunning Switch 2 against PS4 in the Kabuki run demonstrates a night and day difference in favour of the Nintendo console hybrid. The game presents with swathes of geometry, textures and shadows missing, a night and day difference. But we need to remember that Cyberpunk here is streaming in from a 5400 RPM mechanical hard drive, and it's using a 1.6 GHz Jaguar CPU. Benchmark sequences like this existing at all may be down to CDPR tackling the streaming challenge on last-gen consoles back in the day. It's just that those streaming test runs persist in all existing versions of the game. So here's how our overall settings match up between Switch 2 in quality mode docked and performance mode undocked, and for added value we've got the same settings locked in for the PlayStation 5 version of the game running in performance mode. Perhaps puzzlingly, you may notice that the PS5 version has some settings like ambient occlusion and volumetric fog resolution that are lower than Switch 2, and there is an explanation for this. The game is running at a far higher resolution on the Sony console, so additional resolution may make up for the quality difference. Mohammed produced these settings back in the day, stacked up against the PC version running at 4K, by the way. Either way, this gives you some idea of the high ticket price items where Switch 2 needed adaptations beyond culling resolution. But it's kind of gratifying to see that CD Projekt Red didn't need a bare bones, radically cut back approach. Returning to the internal streaming tests here against the PlayStation 5 version of the game, in terms of what's actually being rendered, Switch 2 is very much in the same ballpark.